Whoa, I just woke up to see my great-grandpa floating in my room. I must have woken up on the wrong side of the bed because I opened my eyes. And there he was, my great-grandpa, just floating in my room like it was no big deal that he pointed at the tank model on my desk. Hey, kid, mind if I take this to fight the Japs? I blinked. Sure. But how? Pretty sure FedEx doesn't deliver to the afterlife. He and the tank model vanished into thin air with a wave of his hand, then I noticed it. The old photo of him on my desk now had a freaking tank in it. My great-grandpa died fighting the Japanese back in the day. He didn't leave much behind. Just that one photo a journalist took before he shipped off to the front. 19 years old. Wearing a ragged cotton jacket. Face smeared with dirt. Grasp a beat-up, chipped broadsword. Not exactly a heroic pose. But his eyes. Pure steel, according to the guys who made it back. My great-grandpa lost both arms in that battle. So what'd he do? Clenched a damn satchel charge in his teeth. Crawled up the enemy hill. And dragged a dozen Japs straight to hell with him. I grew up on stories about him. Always wondering what it'd be like to meet the legendary old man. Turns out dreams do come true. The night before, I dreamed about him. He asked me when we'd finally drive the Japs out. 4 more years. I told him, then he asked when we'd take the fight to their homeland. I didn't know what to say. Slap. His hand slapped me across the face. They nearly wiped us off the map. And you're just gonna let them walk away. Pathetic. You're no great-grandson of mine. I woke up. My left cheek burning like I'd been hit. His words stung worse. Compared to him. I was pathetic. As I rubbed my eyes. I heard his voice again, clear as day. Hey, kid, don't cry. I was too hard on you last night. Instinctively, I muttered. No, you were right. Wait, hold up, that wasn't part of the dream. I looked up, there he was. Semi-transparent. Floating at the foot of my bed. He drifted around my room like a curious ghost. Poking at my computer. Eyeballing my model collection. I yelped. Great-grandpa. What the, how are you here? He shrugged. Dunno. Woke up floating by your bed. Then he pointed at the old photo. That's me. Huh. So, I'm dead. That was a loaded question, technically. Yeah. Had been dead for decades in my timeline. But since when do dead people just pop in for a chat? Before I could even begin to explain, he moved on, pointing at my tank model again. So, about that tank, can I take it? I've got Japs to kill. It was a Soviet Sherman model. The T-34 wrecked fascists in Europe and did some serious work in East Asia, too, but not until 1945. For years after great-grandpa died. If Head had one of these back then. Forget taking a hill, he could have wiped out half their officers. Then it hit me. He died in the Battle of Midway in 1941. Great-grandpa. Take whatever you want, I said. Then, hesitating. But, you're kinda ghostly. How's that gonna work? I mean, I could try shipping it. But good luck getting a delivery to the underworld. He just grinned. As long as you're willing. Then, poof, he faded away. And the tank model. Gone. I rushed to the photo. There it was. A brand new T-34. Right beside him. Grasp. I just changed history.no. Seriously. I looked it up. My great-grandpa was supposed to die in 1941. But now, record said he made it to 1943.2 extra years. I called my dad in a panic. Hey, when did great-grandpa die again? 1943. In the Guadalcanal campaign. My heart pounded. I searched historical archives. Before. His name wasn't even recorded. Now, June 3rd. Tom Wilson's squad, armed with a Soviet Sherman tank, held off over 50 enemy assaults and spearheaded deep into occupied territory. Eliminated 1 major general, 3 officers, and 215 enemy troops. I stared at the screen. Throat tight. Only 2 words came out. Holy shit. He turned a model into a real tank and took it back to wreck the Japs after the shock wore off. Excitement kicked in. 1 tank wasn't enough to change the war. Record said his T-34 got bombed by Japanese planes before they could reverse engineer it for the resistance. Next time he showed up, I was gonna arm him with an entire arsenal. I didn't know if his ghostly powers worked on anything besides models. But I wasn't taking chances. I called my buddy, who owned a model shop. David, I need 1,000 Sherman tanks, 1,000 F-35 Lightnings, 10,000 howitzer M1S tanks, Planes. Artillery. Great-grandpa was getting the works. Who the hell is this? A stranger's voice barked back that I froze. Ah, David Johnson. Wrong number. Don't bother me while I'm gaming. Click.my brain short-circuited. I knew David's number. ID brought him breakfast every damn day in college. Dude called me Pops. Then it hit me that I sprinted to my dad's room and dug out his old photo albums. Everything was different. Our house. My school. Even Dad's decade-old BMW, now a Hongqi sedan in the pictures. Great-grandpa's changed history rewrote my family's life. No wonder David didn't recognize me, but were we still friends? Before I could spiral, my phone rang. Yo, dude, heard you called my old number. Sorry, my cousin's using it now. David's voice. Same lazy drawl. I laughed in relief. You asshole. Turns out that some things don't change. David hooked me up with the models. Even had them delivered by truck. You opening a store or something? I smirked. Nah, just cutting into General MacArthur's supply chain. He rolled his eyes and helped me unload. My bedroom couldn't hold it all. So I cleared out the garage. Parking Dad's Hongqi outside. Now. We wait. I didn't know how this was happening. But I knew one thing. Great-grandpa was coming back, after days of restless waiting. I dreamed of him again, this time. I was in some Soviet-style building. Great-grandpa and his squad were slurping noodles. Nobody batted an eye at my sudden appearance. Kid, try your great-grandma's cooking. He waved me over. Beside him sat a young woman with braids. I'd never seen her before. But something in my blood knew her. Great-grandma. I blurted. She covered her face. Embarrassed. I'm only 20. Oh, right. That if she was 20, then that meant, Mom, I'm hungry. A snot-nosed kid burst in. No way. That was my grandpa, the same stern old man who'd scolded me my whole childhood, now a clingy toddler. Before I could tease him, Great-grandpa pulled me aside. About that tank. Got any more? Thing's a beast. But Jap planes took it out. A nasty scar now split his face, right eye to left cheek. He touched it casually. Could have been worse. My chest ached. Never again, Great-grandpa. This time, I've got everything. At the word everything, the whole squad crowded around. Jap rifles. Czech machine guns. Nah, Italian artillery. That Soviet tank was a killer. Though, I grinned. Gentlemen, this isn't foreign tech. They groaned. Chinese made. We've got plenty of junk already. Back then, our industry was garbage. They fought a world-class military with homemade scrap, not that China. I raised a fist. 21st-century China. We remake the world. I woke up. Great-grandpa floated at my bedside, and this time, he brought the whole squad. A dozen translucent soldiers packed my room. Gaping at everything. One whispered, so this is the future. No bombs. No enemy planes. I nodded. Because of you, nobody bullies China anymore. I wanted to tell them everything, how would never again be bayonet practice for invaders. How pregnant women would never be butchered for sport, but there was no time. I jumped up. Follow me. The garage awaited. A history-changing arsenal. As I hit the hallway, Mom's voice rang out. Shadi, what are you doing up? Shadi, my name. Literally, defeat the enemy. Great-grandpa's eyes gleamed. That's your name. I nodded. Grandpa insisted. Said it was your last words. Dad's name was Tianjin, advance. If I ever have a son, I'm naming him Tong, unification. Great-grandpa smiled. Good. Damn good. The bespectacled man next to him elbowed him irritably. How can there still be enemies left for our great-grandchildren to fight? We should have wiped them all out. Our descendants should have names like peace. Like tranquility. Great-grandpa quickly nodded. The political commissar's right. The enemies are ours to deal with. Our descendants deserve peace. I scratched my head sheepishly. Our ancestors were born in war and died fighting. They bought our peace with blood and sacrifice. Thanks to them, we do live in peace now, even prosperity. When my grandpa insisted on naming me Shadi, defeat the enemy, it wasn't just to honor great-grandpa. It was also regret that if we'd been stronger back then, maybe millions wouldn't have died just to watch the enemy retreat. But now, we can change that. I led great-grandpa and his squad to the garage, gesturing at the shelves packed with models. These are our latest tanks, planes, And artillery, to Pophthalene gear. Take them all. This time, we pushed straight to their homeland. I'd worried they wouldn't know how to use advanced tech, but great-grandpa just waved me off. Don't treat us like country bumpkins. A gun's a gun. A plane's a plane. He pointed at the bespectacled political commissar. Your Zhao great-grandpa studied in Germany. He was flying planes before your grandpa was even born. That settled it, the squad got to work. Grasping models back one by one. Since they could only carry one at a time. It was slow going, but they were loving it, compared to losing hundreds of men just to take a single hill. Making a few trips for state-of-the-art tanks. Easy. I'd also prepared books. Hoping to boost their era's tech level. No luck. Great-grandpa's ghostly powers only worked on models. Don't sweat it. He clapped my shoulder, though I couldn't feel it. With these guns, well, chase them to the ends of the earth. By dawn, they'd cleared the garage. Great-grandpa grinned. One last trip, come with me. I closed my eyes. When I opened them, I was back in 1943. Outside, the hills were alive, tanks, artillery, and torches flickering over a sea of steel. Great-grandpa dragged over a bearded officer. Regiment commander, this is my great-grandson, Wang Shadi. He brought us gear from 80 years in the future. Colonel Brown gripped my hand, voice shaking. Comrade Shadi, thank you. With these, we won't have to hold our land with lives anymore. I snapped a salute. Don't thank me, sir. Thank yourselves. Without their sacrifice, China would have been bled dry like every other colony. I just handed them toys. They paid with their lives. The colonel dragged us to a tank, running a hand over its armor. This is your best. I nodded. The Type 99A, a modern beast with armor equivalent to 1000 mm RHA. Capable of punching through 900 mm at 2000 meters. Its missiles could reach 5 kilometers, against Japan's Tinkan tanks with 20 mm armor. Overkill. I pointed to the F-35S. Sir, tanks rule the ground, but planes rule the sky. These, stealth fighters. The colonel blinked. Stealth, like, invisible. He turned to political commissar Zhao. You went to school, ever heard of invisible planes? Zhao scowled. It's from the future. You oaf. Shadi. Explain. I tried, badly. To summarize radar evasion, the F-35's AESA radar could spot enemies at 300 kilometers, while World War II planes were still eyeballing targets, even if Japan copied European radar tech overnight. The F-35 would break them. The colonel let out 3 booming "How?" and sprinted to a fighter. A young pilot leaned out, grinning. Sir, is this ours? We can build these now. Torchlight lit up their faces, some younger than mine. All hardened by war, their hunger for victory, their hope for China. Put my generation to shame. Yes, I said. And this is just the start. We'll have quantum satellites, artificial suns, space stations, deep-sea explorers. We fell low once, but we never bowed. Everything you do today lays the foundation. I wanted to say more, but all I could manage was a deep bow. The colonel trembled, then roared. Comrades, our ancestors sent us these weapons. Let's give them a future worthy of them. He vaulted into a tank. Zhao. First Company Commander. We move out now. Great-grandpa raised a fist. Advance. Defeat the enemy. The rallying cry shook the hills. Advance. Defeat the enemy. Dawn broke over 1,000 rumbling tanks. 10,000 artillery pieces. Too few trained pilots kept most fighters grounded. But the armor alone could roll over Japan. Then it hit me. I forgot warships. Great-grandma, holding my toddler grandpa, smiled. Don't worry. We'll build ships, and planes, and everything else you showed us. She gazed at the rising sun. We'll have it all. I nodded. Of course. They would. Then my chest tightened. Great-grandma, I might not see you again. Originally, Great-grandpa died in 1941. Now, armed with future tech, had lived to old age. That was good, but it meant our timelines might never cross again. She patted my cheek. Knowing you exist, tall, strong, never hungry, that's enough. Malnutrition kept her tiny at 20. To her, never hungry was the highest praise. Tears spilled over. Great-grandma, Never hungry sounds like an insult now. She laughed. Not in her world. Is life good in your time? Do you eat rice? White flour buns? Better. Much better. Meat daily. Fish. Banquets fit for emperors. Ginseng for pocket change, her eyes shone. Then it's worth it. All of it. As the sun rose, I faded away, her last words lingering. Thank you for showing us hope. Our fight mattered. Back in my room, I dove for the computer. Did it work? Did they turn the tide? The headline froze me. Japan announces 6th round of ocean oil dumping. Set for 20th. Does Japan still exist? No way. Great-grandpa's squad lost with future tech. No way. China, after a century of humiliation, would stop at driving them out. That I frantically searched for answers. Online records about the Pacific theater of World War II were scarce. The only thing mentioned was that in 1943, the Japanese suddenly withdrew all forces from China, regrouping in their homeland to face the incoming Americans, and somehow, they signed a non-aggression pact with us, just paid a hefty sum. And that was it. No way, absolutely no way. That I refused to believe it. Something must have happened. Something big, but details about that year, especially what went down in China in 1943, were practically non-existent. No records of the planes, tanks, or artillery great-grandpa took back. That I could find profiles on great-grandpa, political commissar Zhao, and Colonel Brown, but they only covered their lives before and after 1943.1943 itself. A blank spot, deliberately erased. So, what the hell happened? Mom called me downstairs for breakfast, so I shoved my questions aside for now. To my surprise, Dad was home. I and the original timeline. He left the military to go into business, always traveling. Last night, he should have been 1,000 miles away. I blurted, Dad, why are you home? He shot me a look, biting into a steamed bun. Where else would I be? The Atlantic's peaceful. The Pacific's peaceful. Hell, even the pirates are gone. I'd love to fight, but there's nobody left to fight. So yeah, I'm home. I froze. Then, a flood of new memories. Dad never left the military. He climbed the ranks over decades. Now a division-level officer, the mental whiplash gave me a splitting headache. I grabbed 2 buns and bolted back to my room. I scoured every source I could find. Only one thing was clear. Great-grandpa died in 1977. Natural causes. The last article about him was an interview. The reporter asked if he had any regrets. His voice was wistful. I regret not being fiercer in battle. Regret that the ocean stopped our advance. Late 1943. Great-grandpa transferred to shipbuilding. 1944. Japan paid reparations. The war ended. He built New China's first ocean-going warship, but never sailed it to those cherry blossom shores. I slammed my laptop shut. Great-grandpa, "I'll finish what you started." My grandpa was old school. He pushed our family toward military service. Dad disagreed. A strong economy feeds a strong army, he argued, steering me toward business. Me. I inherited grandpa's stubbornness and dad's defiance. I studied aerospace, even after 2 timeline shifts. I was still in that program, luckily. My school also had a naval architecture program. I switched majors, begged seniors for notes, and crammed like my life depended on it. I swore I'd build the best damn warship, cross the Pacific, and point our guns at Mount Rushmore. Then, a wrench in the plan. David's birthday. He invited me over, along with a guy named Mark Smith from the archives. When David introduced me, Shoddy, Mark's face went rigid. Shoddy? Which shoddy? David laughed. Mock charging like a soldier. Advance. Defeat the enemy. The room erupted in laughter. Mark didn't smile. You're Wang Shoddy. Something about him felt familiar. Before I could think, I blurted, my great-grandpa was Tom Wilson. Mark's grip on my hand turned vice-tight. Tom Wilson. Wang Shoddy. It's you. David pulled us apart, confused. Oh right, Mark's great-granddad was in the same unit as yours. I stared. Now I saw it. He looked like political commissar Zhao. We swapped WeChat info. Days later, 2 men in black suits knocked on my door. Comrade Wang Shoddy, come with us. Dad stood behind them, in full uniform. For once, his hand trembled as he gripped mine. Go. Blindfolded, driven somewhere. When the cloth came off, I was in a massive conference room, packed with officials. Mark shoved a file at me. frantic. Is this you? I looked down at him, my blood turned to ice. A black and white photo. Colonel Brown laughing. Zhao's eyes wet. Great-grandpa proud beside a tank, and me, half my face lit by firelight. 1943. Where did you get this? I grabbed Mark's collar. No one took pictures that night. The room buzzed with whispers. Mark's voice was electric. 1943. Our troops received futuristic weapons from a mysterious source, turned the tide overnight. But no one remembered who he was, not even his name. Then I found my great-grandfather's diary. One line. 1943. Wang Shadi. They'd assumed it meant a Wang who killed enemies. Until Mark heard my name at David's. Like lightning, I remembered. I was vibrating. Finally, answers about 1943. I gave them 1,000 Shermans, 10,000 artillery pieces, even if they couldn't fly the F-35s. Japan shouldn't have walked away unscathed. A uniformed officer frowned. Type 99s. F-35s. Those are the real names. I nodded. He face-bombed. Your great-grandpa called them beasts and phantoms. We thought those were the models. Where'd you get them? The room went dead silent. I gulped. Spilling everything. The models. The timeline shifts, scoffs. Disbelief, but the more I talked, names, battles, tiny details, the quieter they got. Hours later. Voice raw. I finished. Silence. Then, a fist slammed the table. Damn it. Our ancestors kicked out the Japs. And then the Americans screwed us. Bombed our embassy. Hijacked our ships. They'll kill them. The man pointed at me. Kid, I believe you. Pause. But you screwed up big time. I blinked. Huh. You gave them tanks and jets, but no fuel. No spare ammo. They had one tank of gas. Once it ran out. Paperweights. Our boys tried to make more shells. But back then, we had nothing. If you'd packed supplies, you think we'd have stopped at Japan. I wanted to punch myself. How did I forget logistics? What now? I can't go back. Mark gripped my shoulder. You dreamed your way there once. You can do it again.